Time for our conversation. My guests are with me right now. Nkechi Oguche, the Chief Executive Officer at Venture Spark, is right here with me in the studio. Hello, Nkechi. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Ayo-Bankole is the founder of Lagos SME Bootcamp. He's joining me from Lagos via Skype. Hello, Ayo. Good to see you too.
Hello, Nancy. It's good to see you again.
Yes. Nice to have both of you join me on the program today. Now, let's get straight to business. The Vice President, I think, will be having, a meeting today, I guess, to commemorate the World SMEs Day, which was on the 27th of June. It was over the weekend with the DG of SME and some others. But it's no gainsaying right now that Nigerian MSMEs have gotten a devastating effect or are still suffering from COVID-19 pandemic. This is a sector that provides about 84% of jobs, 96% of businesses. Aya, let me start with you. How much of this coronavirus pandemic how much effect have we seen on MSMEs? You are the founder of Lagos SME Bootcamp. What are some of those business owners? What have they been telling you over the last few months?
Okay. To understand the impact that this lockdown has had on MSMEs, you have to even first look at what types of MSMEs, what types of businesses constitute MSMEs, and what is their impact, or contributions to the economy. Now, let's even look at what MSMEs, are made up of in our economy. Now, first and foremost, you've already said it earlier on that MSMEs, account for about 96% of Nigeria's businesses, right? Now, let's break that down. Education and construction are the top 5 for medium-scale businesses, right? You know that education has been locked down completely for the past 3 months, so there is no movement in that area. That has been shut down, right? Now, wholesale, trade, agriculture, and other services, account for 76% of micro enterprises, right? While education, manufacturing, and a few other wholesale enterprises account for 68% of small enterprises. So be you small, medium, or micro, you have been affected by this lockdown. Now, amongst our community members, right, we had a survey amongst our community members, and about 80% of them said that this lockdown has impacted them, negatively. Either it is for their revenue, their top line, their bottom line, their distribution chain, their customer fulfillment, across board, was heavily hindered. And again, about 60% of the SMEs in our community are people who rely on daily inflows, daily transactions. And because of the lockdown, they were unable to make money on a daily basis. So their cash flow was heavily impacted, and they had to revert to their buffer. Now, there's also a survey that was done by SMEDAN, by Budget and Faith Foundation, and that survey even gave a more damning report. About 1,900 participants were interviewed, and 93.4% of them, said that this lockdown has negatively impacted their business. And 30% of them reported that their businesses will not survive. That's scary, right? And if you look further down, you will see that there are other repercussions. There are job losses for those who have employment, and then there's the overall or overbearing impact that it now has on the larger economy, given that MSMEs account for about 50%, 49% of our GDP.
Okay, Nkechi, you're the Chief Executive Officer of Venture Spark, a workspace company. How has it been in the last 3 months? Of course, many of us couldn't go to our workplaces and all of that. How has it been? How has it impacted you as a business, as well as even those that are your clients?
Yes. So with the pandemic and the spread and the instituted lockdown, obviously we had to shut down our business because we are a co-working space. We're a hub. We have over 5,000 people coming to our park every month. and people interacting. That's the design of the space. It's designed to be a community where people can come together, work together. So I'm working on my business in my corner, and maybe you're working on yours, and we can collaborate together. That's the design of the space. It was designed to enable interaction and enable collaboration. So in keeping the social distancing rules and in being able to create a safe space for our community, we had to shut down the park and to observe how the trends were changing. And we still maintain close contact with our community virtually, because the community is the heart and soul, and we exist to serve them. We exist to enable them do their businesses really, really well. So we kept collecting data from them to find out what are they struggling with, how has it been like, how are they coping, and we are trying to also support them with information, tools, whatever it is that they needed to be able to continue doing businesses. So some of the things that they complained about, or that some of the challenges that they faced, was being unable to do productive work because they were working from home. So they didn't have access to electricity, like constant electricity, even internet connectivity. And so there was even pressure from their end for us to reopen as soon as possible, because they needed the workspace to be able to work. And we looked at how can we support them, how do we help them to do this, because basic infrastructure was this problem we were solving for them, and now they were still experiencing it. And in addition to that is also the impact the pandemic and the lockdown has had on their business, with changes in consumer and customer demand, changes in their cash flow. Even some of them, their business models were becoming obsolete, because some of them, they needed to interact with people to do business, and now they could no longer do that. And some of them didn't have the structures to be able to do that. So we said, let's support them. Let's teach them how to build these structures as quickly as possible. Because even in the middle of the pandemic, in the middle of this economic devastation, or whatever you want to call it, there are opportunities. So many great businesses have been built through a crisis, Airbnb and a few others. So there are opportunities, but are they able to access it? And we wanted to support them. I know that even the government had created some relief programs for SMEs, but unfortunately, some startups can't access it.
Yes, I was actually coming to that, because just a few weeks after we had the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in Nigeria, the CBN just came into swift action, launched some programs and all of that, 50 billion targeted credit facility, which the CBN has said now that about 49 billion of it has been disbursed and all of that. So we've seen at least monetary and fiscal measures from government. Fiscal measures also part of, just even before COVID-19, the Finance Act was signed by Mr. President. MSMEs that make up to 25 million naira to zero are not expected to pay company income tax and all of that. Speak to me about like some of those measures, and how, is it really enough?
So the problem with these measures is in the design. Unfortunately, some startups don't qualify, they don't meet the criteria that was set, unfortunately. Some of them, being a startup means you're still experimenting with certain things. So you don't have certain structures in place. You may not have your taxes all sorted out, even though these are things that we encourage them to have. You may not have it all sorted out. Some of them are still in the process of even registering their business. So the qualification process disqualifies them, and they can't access it. And that is a problem with the design. So some of the people that have been badly hit can't even access these funds. So you have more stable organizations are the ones that would have access. I'm sure if they do a survey to find out the nature of the businesses that have accessed the grants and the loans so far, you would find that there are businesses that are a little bit more stable. So what this would lead to is the businesses that are lower down in structure, the really, really smaller businesses, would go out of business. And then you will just have the ones in the middle that are still trying to weather through this storm. They are the ones that would remain. So those mom and pop shops, they'll end up closing down, and those little businesses.
Okay, Ayo, let me come back to you and still speak about this monetary and fiscal measures. Since you interact with a lot of small businesses, do you know of any small business that has accessed these funds? Or have you, I don't want to say head, do you know?
I must totally commend, I think Ugochi for our perspective. I mean, Nancy, you know that, I've been on your show a couple of times on other platforms, and this has always been my issue, the design, and then let me add to it, the execution, right? So I'll get to that, but let me go straight to your question, right? Yes, I know a couple who have benefited, but it's not so much about if I know, but about the percentage of those that I know versus those that, that I know that have not benefited or were not qualified, or were qualified but by some stroke of miracle did not get any funds. So that already shows, for example, that already supports what Ugochi said, that the design of that such palliatives or such initiatives is already rigged against the 96% of players in the MSME space who are in the informal sector. Because if the largest chunk of the players or those your target audience or your target market that you're trying to provide a palliative measures for are already by design excluded, then the impact, if you do a thorough impact assessment and you're honest with yourself, then you will see that you would have not achieved what you want, your intended objectives. And what then should the government be doing? It means that in your palliative design, when you want to reach out to these organizations or these entities, you have to embed mechanisms for bringing them into the formal space. So, for example, you can tell, instead of disqualifying them or saying if you don't have XYZ, you can say, for example, that if you guys can register in clusters at some point, per industry or per nature of business, register in cluster, you would have access to XYZ, provide incentives for making them register. And yes, just yesterday,
are you not talking of hold on, Ayo, perhaps like coming as cooperatives. Let's say if we're into ICT, we're an ICT cooperative made up of like 20, 50 businesses, and we're able to access any kind of fund or any kind of support intervention that the government has. Is that what you're trying to say? Because we see we even see more of cooperatives in the informal sector. Our mothers of those days are even up till now, traders, market women, still do all of that. Yes, so why exactly? Is it that the MSME space in trying to be formal is also losing, like they say, a lot of things native intelligence has done in the past. I don't know if both of you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, Ayo, land on your point. I just wanted to bring that in so that you could answer too.
Yeah, you got it right. So what I'm simply saying is these informal players in the MSME space they've resorted to self-help, e.g. through those cooperatives. Now, our government now needs to find a creative means of utilizing those cooperatives and those existing clusters, or encourage them to create new ones. It requires some thinking, but you have to use them more because they are closer to the natives. If you understand the demographics of these guys, you know that they don't understand even the communication, the means of communicating your policies to these guys. Most of them don't even understand it. So you have to operate at their level because they are the majority. Otherwise, you would end up, and if you look at even lending to MSMEs, you see that is very infinitesimal in the banks because of this same problem. The guys who are in your largest target are not, they are by design not qualified. So you have to look for creative ways to bring them in using the platforms that they themselves have already provided, or create new ones for further empowering them.
Okay, you know what? Let's stick with this a bit, because for me, we need to look for a mechanism or a design that will really bring the needed impact. When you are talking about cooperatives, and I see that Nkechi is also nodding in affirmation to what you said. Take a look at, for example, the farmers. The farmers, all farmers association, there's a cooperative, they come together. The CBN, for example, deals with different farmers organizations, farmers association, rice cultivators, cotton, and all of that. If we say, let's go this route, there's also the tendency, because not all those associations capture a majority of people. And there's also this the disadvantage that most of these associations eventually, or cooperatives, become a bit political. So it's like, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So why,
absolutely,
yes, what kind of design or mechanism can we bring in that would not, end up in that? Let me allow Nkechi. I see you are smiling because you know what I'm talking about, but I'll come back to you. Let Nkechi answer a bit.
So I think a great way for the government to have approached this is, one, to earmark a particular amount or percentage that's supposed to go to these segments of business, and to be intentional about making sure that they receive it. And the government could have used certain vehicles to disburse it, like incubators and accelerators that have access to most of these businesses. At least they are dispersed all over the nation. They are already used to working with these businesses and supporting them. So some of the things that they will do is provide the necessary training and support on even how to use the fund, on even how the funds are allocated. So the government could have used them as a tool to disburse some of these funding. So if the target, maybe the target was set for 1 million startups, and they were supposed to get 10 million naira each, these incubators and accelerators would have been the one to design a program to ensure that they access it, and they could access it in a batch-like system. So there are certain criteria that they would meet, and these criteria are a bit more understanding, because the incubators and the accelerators understand these startups. They've worked with them over and over. Now, for us at Ventures Park, our sister company, Ventures Platform, runs an incubator. And we've run different programs with different organizations, from the World Bank to Google, different organizations. So we are already equipped to design programs, and so many other incubators as well. So this is a tool that the government should have used to do this, because not only would these startups gain access to the fund, they would gain access to the knowledge and the know-how on how to use it to position their businesses better. So that would be better impact.
Ayo, you know, for me, it's, I don't know, but the issue is talking about the systems or the mechanisms which, because when you're talking about startups or MSMEs in Nigeria, we have a lot of micro businesses. Most of them, they will say they don't have access to funds. There is a Development Bank of Nigeria that was set up also for this kind of purpose, but the channel, they are financed through microfinance banks. We have over 800 microfinance banks in the country. The NICEL Microfinance Bank was also set up as a national microfinance bank to be able to do this. Even with all of this, we seem not to have gotten we seem not to have gotten our mojo in this. And you know, where my mind also went to is it Bangladesh? Yes, Grameen Bank, that we've seen quite a whole lot, yes, happening. So why are we, what exactly is the problem? And it seems that capital is everywhere, but it's not getting to those that it should get to, or it's not getting to as many as it should get to.
You know, I really like Nkechi because, you know, some of the thoughts that she's sharing are some of the things I've said on the previous platform, right, when we're discussing this thing, this same topic, but across Africa. Now, let's talk about the execution. Remember I said that there's a problem with the design, which Nkechi has said, then there's a problem with the execution, which she just mentioned now. But let's elaborate further, right? Now, don't forget that there are various enablers for execution, right? So you have the people element, you have the technology element, right? Then you have the systems, right? Which is more like an amalgamation, you know, or the interconnectedness of everything, you know, the security and the banking system and all that. Now, there are problems at every layers of this thing that hinders its effective execution. So you can't just come up with a palliative measure during the world's biggest pandemic and be adopting the same business as usual model of execution that you have been adopting, knowing that there are problems at every layer of your implementation phase. So what you can do, as Nkechi has said, on one end, is to engage existing accelerators and incubators or players in that space. You know, we have so many of them doing brilliantly, even without government funding.
No, but the issue is also how many of those accelerators or enablers can reach those businesses. Do you understand? Because we have 41.5 million MSME micro businesses.
Yes.
So how many of those accelerators or enablers can get? I can guarantee you right now, even off the cuff, that you guys will not be able to reach everybody.
No, I agree. Now, so if I can finish, so that's why I said that it's not only the it's not only the accelerators you are using. You are using everybody. So you are using accelerators and incubators. You are giving them their own clear KPIs for helping you. You are using the clusters, the cooperatives. Now, don't forget, I also said existing clusters and new ways of designing clusters to curtail the excesses of the existing clusters. So it can be cooperative, it can be associations. Don't forget that a lot of the associations and unions, as you have said, are also heavily politicized and corrupt. So you have to look outside of them you have to create new clusters. You have to look at also existing platforms. So for example, there are some platforms that already provide funding aside the incubators. There may be micro schemes, microfinance banks, micro insurance platforms that you can use, which was, now look at that. Let me give you an example. When the CBN was going to disburse its SME funding, NESA was the only bank that was allowed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unacceptable. How can one bank reach 41 million MSMEs? It's already designed to fail. But I think it was that error was then corrected, when they were going to do other disbursements. For example, the healthcare SME disbursement was done using different banks, right? So there will be different layers. We're just giving examples. It's not exhaustive. There will be different layers of channels through which you reach these guys. But you can't afford to leave it only in the hands of a few players who are already used to dealing with guys in the formal space, and then they call them MSMEs, and then they scratch only about 4% of the MSMEs who are in the formal space. Now that's for implementation. Now, aside these channels of distribution or these channels of reaching those guys, you will now engage independent consultants who will monitor the success and KPI and delivery of the strategic objectives of the project. I, for example, as a strategy professional, have had to work on project management for some of the world's biggest donors in Nigeria, in the most rural environment, because they know that the funds that they provide for education, for healthcare, for HIV, for women, don't get to the channels because of the various systemic problems. So if foreign donors can do it, I don't know why Nigerians cannot do that. So you create different gates of control, and you create different platforms. You can even use schools who are the indigenous students whose parents are SMEs. We need to do the hard work. Most times we just adopt the easiest way out, and then we don't achieve our objectives.
Okay, I wonder what the Vice President will be saying with DG Smidan today. I think they are supposed to be having a virtual stuff, and I'm just bothered and concerned that we shouldn't just be doing the same old talk. I know the Vice President went around the country, is it last year, the MSMEs clinic, going around the country, MSMEs clinic, where you just like one-stop shop for some of the bottlenecks that MSMEs face, like get CAC, NAFDAC, and all of that. But I just hope that new strategies and new designs as well as mechanisms will be put in place. But let me come to Nkechi, let me stick with Ayo a bit.
Okay.
Are there some opportunities that this crisis has also brought up for small businesses? What are some of the things your guys have been speaking to you about in terms of opportunities that have been identified despite this coronavirus pandemic? Because as much as it has had devastating effects on majority of businesses, some other businesses have also been built. Like I know businesses, just like Nkechi said earlier, Airbnb, there are some businesses that were built out of crisis and are big businesses today.
No, absolutely. There has been opportunity. In fact, I was speaking to a friend, or one of my followers online who also runs an MSME. He said that his business has grown by over, I think, 30 or 40% during this crisis. And don't forget that what has become a problem for many has become an opportunity for a lot of others. Now, let me give you an example. If you play, there has been new channels there has been new elements in the healthcare ecosystem, for example, that has thrown up tremendous opportunities for people who play in that space, people who play in the fashion industry, for example. You've seen all sorts of types of face masks being sold. State governments are buying face masks in bulk. Companies are buying face masks in bulk. You've seen people creating. In fact, there is a gentleman, who designed an indigenous type of ventilator that, Plateau State government funded and adopted. You have individuals creating innovative hand washing machines. You have a lot of, in fact, logistics has boomed massively this period. You now have new players. So there is a lot of opportunities, to be honest. But again, is about the sum of the whole, right? So even though there has been opportunities for many, right, by the time you look at those who lost a lot of money at this time, then you can see that the balance is tilted towards those who lost money as against those who created opportunities out of it.
Okay, Nkechi, let me come to you. We've seen majority of the MSMEs, or majority of the MSMEs in Nigeria, we have a lot of them, or majority of them, or an appreciable amount of them owned by women. Women-owned, women-led businesses. You are leading a business, definitely, you're a chief executive officer. 41% of Nigeria's micro businesses are owned by women. I think that was a report some time ago by PwC, that's PricewaterhouseCoopers. So we have in Nigeria about 23 million female entrepreneurs in that space. How has this pandemic, do you think it has affected women-owned or women-led businesses differently? That's the A part of the question. The B part of the question is also this working from home syndrome. Is it a syndrome or this working from home reality that we have? Is it affecting male-owned businesses differently from female-owned business? And I'm asking that question deliberately as someone that is a mom and all of that. Sometimes I will be at home, my son will be like, I'm like, no, yes, I need to work now. So speak to me about that.
So that's an interesting question. And interestingly enough, I tweeted about something like this few weeks ago.
Really?
And what I said was that if we're to do an assessment of the working from home reality, we would see that it is not very suitable for women as when you compare it to men. Because working from home for a woman is like doing two jobs at the same time. You're still a mother, you have your child that is coming to bother you. Someone wants to come and ask you what's for lunch, and you're, don't you see me working? I'm trying to prepare a report here. So it has affected women even more. Women are having increased burnout. And this is just even me looking internally at our own organization. When I look at the women that are married and have kids, they are more mentally strained. They're having increased burnout as compared to the men. There should be a survey on this. Someone needs to really, really assess it. But it's just double work for women right now. They are still being mothers at home and they are working, and there's just so much distractions. Now, for women that are leading businesses, if they are working from home, they face these challenges. And women historically it's more difficult for them to access funding than men. That's what statistics have shown. Even for us in our fund, we have funded less women than men. And it wasn't even intentional. So when you look at the access to fund, maybe if they should do a survey, when they do a breakdown of all the people that have accessed the funding, check how many of them have been led by women, how many have been led by men. I'm sure you would find that there will be a very great difference. So if women are not accessing funds as much as men, that reduces the chance of survival for their business because they need these funds to grow, to scale, to pivot, to launch new products. So that means their businesses may emerge differently through the pandemic than for the men. So these are some of the things that women face when they're doing business.
Ayo, it's not that we have left you as a man, but this is what also concerns us as women, the survivability rates for women-owned businesses, even as they move through the senior leadership position, corporate leadership, or even boards. You see, as you climb, you see more women, you see more men than women. And it's not just in Nigeria, it's globally. So I had to ask Nkechi that question. Let's come now to how much optimism our businesses are having despite this pandemic. Our businesses showing that, come on guys, we're going to get through the storm and we're going to get through it better. Some of your people showing that kind of optimism. Are they?
I didn't quite get that question. The network keeps hanging here.
Okay,
but,
okay, Ayo.
I got you right. I think you're asking if businesses are optimistic.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. How optimistic are small businesses at this time? Because even from some of the surveys and the reports that I've read, that 3 out of 10 or even 4 out of 10 businesses would would not survive this pandemic. 3 or 4 may even lose their jobs. So do you still think that there's still optimism in the atmosphere for small businesses at this time?
There's no optimism in the atmosphere, right? And there's no optimism amongst the MSMEs themselves. And let me explain why. You know, I'm a realist. Let me explain why. Even though, so that's why we are working hard to make them better. Just as Nkechi said, that we need to continuously provide platforms to teach them how they can diversify, teach them how they can improve their cash flows. Now, let me go back to statistics, right? Now, based on that same survey that I told you that was conducted, the MSMEs themselves, 47% of them, that's half. 47% of them, you know, only 47% of them said they are positive that their businesses will survive the pandemic. So more than half of them, 53% of them, are not optimistic, right? And 30% of them reported that their businesses will not survive at all. You know, so you can't begin to build optimism. Now let's look at it at the macro level, right? The country is already forecasted to experience dip growth. GDP growth is forecasted to dip by about 5.4 or 5.04%, even lower than global forecast, right? And as we've already said, if the MSMEs constitute about 96% of businesses, then an overall, you know, recession that bad in the economy is going to affect them. So which atmosphere? Where is the optimism coming from in the atmosphere? And we still have these execution and design problems that we've spoken about. So there is nothing really giving them hope. What we can actually do, and as we are doing now, is for the media, the accelerators, the incubators, the NGOs, everybody needs to rally around the MSMEs. Because for most MSMEs, they are doing it for survival. MSME in Nigeria is a survivalist strategy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. Yes, most are doing it for survival because they don't have jobs, because they are hungry, because they need to live, right? So if we don't help them, if we don't rally around them, all of us are in trouble.
And you know, just what you said, I think it was mentioned, or I said something like that in one of those platforms online or something, because the businesses we're seeing in Nigeria are out of survivalist strategy. So you see that some of them are even founders or sole entrepreneurs. That is why perhaps you don't also see the development of some businesses outlasting generations or families, that if the owner dies, it's finished. You know, we don't have that collaboration kind of spirit amongst us, you know, in terms of I and Nkechi can come together, have a business without perhaps ulterior motives or thinking. Anyway, that's another show I have to do another day, perhaps, you know. But what I also want to say, yes, what I also want to say is that the new behavior, consumer behavior, the new behavior we're seeing right now as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the lockdowns, do you see perhaps some kind of new startups coming up? This question is also for Nkechi. When I took a look at the consumer expenditure report for 2019 as released by the MBS, I saw a lot of opportunities there. I think I did a 2-day show on it when the MBS released that report, that Nigerians spent about 40 trillion naira on consumption in 2019. Most of it went for food. You said earlier that logistics have been having a very good time at this point, perhaps not one of the hardest hit. So are there some new opportunities that the new consumer behavior, new buying behavior, new behaviors that the pandemic has presented to us, is it also presenting opportunities to MSMEs? And can you take this?
Yeah. So definitely there are opportunities that are in the middle of this.
Even ICT?
Yes, across, because once there are problems, there's an opportunity to solve it. So when restaurants were locked down, so many businesses were locked down, boutiques were locked down, they needed to still engage with their clients, they needed to deliver. So the logistics company became a solution and a way for them to do that. Some businesses were not virtual. They didn't have virtual presence. They didn't see the need at the time. But now they needed it, so they had to engage developers to build websites for them, to manage their social media, to be able to create content. So these are opportunities that are coming up in the middle of this. But with opportunities, and as demand goes up, what happens is that you have more players coming in. So even for the logistic companies, it will get to a point where there will be too many players and it wouldn't be profitable for people to remain in that industry. And you have some people leaving that space. But there are so many opportunities that are coming. Even how do you manage your team remotely? You can build a tool, or you can teach people how to use the tools that are available. How do you allow people to be able to stay in touch with their teams, to be able to manage productivity whilst they work remotely? These are all problems that exist for new age businesses. People are going back to work. How do you ensure that they are safe? I think he also mentioned something about that. How do you ensure that they are safe? That's an opportunity. There's a company that we use to manage the screening protocols at the park. Now, they created a solution because of this pandemic where they would screen people ahead of time, and as they come, they are doing certain checks. So that is an opportunity for them. They created this new product because of this. But the thing is, and I say this a lot to lots of startups, there's a time element. So with these opportunities, usually it's the people that are able to go ahead and go first and to be able to access these opportunities. So there's a time element. And some of these solutions may not be relevant a year from now. So a year from now, when everything is relaxed and there's a vaccine available, we may not need to have to wash our hands before we enter a building or wear masks. So what happened to the businesses that came as a result of that? The people that are making the masks, the people that made the automated hand washing system. So sometimes there is just a duration for a period. And you mentioned something about how people don't understand how to build a business. Now, if you're someone who understands it, you know that your hand wash machine business by next year may become obsolete because we wouldn't need it. How do you plan to ensure that you've made maximum profitability in that duration of your business? That's being able to understand it, being able to calculate how much should I invest, knowing that this is the maximum return I can get. This is the longest period that this business can exist for. So being able to know how to do good business. How he mentioned something about corporate governance, like those simple things. But because businesses are born out of survival instinct, I know how to sew dresses, and then you start a fashion business, but you don't know how to do your accounting, you don't know how to build partnerships, you don't know how to create agreements, you don't know those things that enable you to build a great business.
Okay, final one, because we just have how many minutes? I think 2 minutes to the end of the show. Ayo, is this pandemic, has it, elaborated the need for more virtual businesses or stay at home and work businesses? Are we going to have increased stay at home and work businesses even when the pandemic leaves? Or, of course, it's a new normal for us and we're living through this pandemic, but would we see a rise of stay at home and work businesses, virtual businesses as we go on? Because people may think that I may not even need a space. Nkechi and her team may be also at risk at the end of the, okay, if things improve, I have constant electricity, internet, I can stay at home and work. Quickly, Ayo.
Okay, yes, we will see an increase, right? For those who are targeting we will see an increase in home behavior or work for those in medium enterprises. But for those who are in the macro, you most likely will not see, because if you are in the micro space, you can't work from home, right? Okay. Most of the demographics, the nature of your business requires you in most times to go out, right? A few of them are going to be able to work from home if you are technology savvy and all that. But don't forget that a large number of our people are also do not have access to power, do not have access to the internet, do not even have access to a lot of the things that they need to logistics and all that. So they are, as I said, they are on survivalist mode and they have to go out to physically interact, right, to be able to survive. So it depends on what your target market is. So for people like Nkechi, I appeal to them to please find business models that can appeal, that can attract those within that micro space, so that they can also benefit from the beautiful services that you're offering.
Okay, Nkechi, very quickly, 30 seconds. What are your final thoughts?
So my final thoughts, and it's just on what we're talking about on optimism. Yes, there's a lot of gloom and panic when all this started, but I believe that in planning for the future, we need to be optimistic. We need to create mentally an amazing future and then build towards that. So I just want to encourage all the SMEs out there that still be optimistic, mentally create a wonderful future and ask yourself, how do I contribute to that?
That's it. I think that's a good way to put it. That's a good way to end the show. Thank you very much, Nkechi, for being on
Thank you for having
the
me.
show. I've been speaking with Nkechi, Chief Executive Officer at Ventures Park. Thank you, Aya, also for joining us. Ayo-Bankole is the founder, Lagos SME Bootcamp. We've been looking at the great lockdown, the COVID-19 impact on MSMEs. I hope the MSMEs that watched us, or people watched us this morning, took one or two things out. It's not all gloom, gloom, gloom. There's always an opportunity in a crisis. I think that was said by Winston Churchill, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you guys for being on the show. All right, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Continue to be the best version of yourself. Be that change you want to see. I am Nnaji. I'll see you all tomorrow, God willing.